In progress, okay. Hello, everybody. Okay. Dzień dobry wszystkim. Jesteśmy na żywo. Zacznę po polsku i przerzucimy się potem na angielski, ale chciałabym powiedzieć dwa słowa. O czym będziemy dzisiaj rozmawiać? Ja się nazywam Anna Szylar i jestem kuratorką sekcji Nowe Narracje w ramach Festiwalu Spektrum. Dla osób, które jeszcze nie kojarzą, czym są Nowe Narracje, to jest wystawa 6 utworów VR-owych, które mamy w 2 lokalizacjach, w małej sali w klubie Bolko i w kawiarni teatralnej, codziennie między 12 a 18, a w weekendy między 12 a 20. Gorąco zachęcam, żebyście Państwo przyszli i zobaczyli wszystko, co przygotowaliśmy. Dzisiaj trochę mamy taką rozmowę obok prac, bo dużo rozmawialiśmy i spotykaliśmy się z twórcami, rozmawiając o ich projektach, które pokazujemy na wystawie, a dzisiaj naszym gościem będzie człowiek, który jest oczywiście też twórcą VR-owym, ale zajął się tematem zrównoważonej cyfrowej produkcji i o tym będziemy rozmawiać dzisiaj podczas spotkania. Będziemy też rozmawiać o jego projekcie Okawari, który prezentował na Festiwalu Filmowym w Wenecji. Jest takim modelowym przykładem tego, w jaki sposób wdrożyć te zasady czy wytyczne związane z ograniczeniem śladu węglowego w produkcji cyfrowej w życie, to znaczy stworzył własny projekt, który odnosi się do tego. I o tym dzisiaj będziemy rozmawiać. Przerzucimy się zaraz na angielski, więc spotkanie odbędzie się po angielsku. Po 40 minutach będzie sesja Q&A, całość potrwa godzinę. Okay, we will switch to English. Hi, Amaury. Nice having you online. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us.
Hi everybody. Thank you. Dobry den is right or yeah?
Dzień dobry. Dobry is in Czech.
Oh, it's in Czech. Sorry. Dzień dobry.
No, it's close. It's close. Actually, the Spektrum Festival had an edition in Czech Republic this year.
Yeah.
Just a few days before we launched the edition in Świdnica, it was in Czech Republic. So you weren't wrong.
Almost right.
Yeah.
So, hello everybody. Many thanks for having me and us today with Okawari and CEPIR. We're really happy to see the project being carried on. There's lots of things to cover, but it's great. We've had some people in Netherlands and some in United States also with MIT Doc Lab that took on also the project, the data, and that try to push it further. So it's really great. We're really happy that Poland also is joining the movement. So it's really great. There's lots to cover. Feel free to interrupt at any time. I will not show all the slides because there was way too much for like 1 hour. But I'm going to share my screen first, and I will start. So. Can you see it correctly? Yeah. All good. Okay.
Yes, all good.
So just to give you a tiny bit of context so that you understand better the point of view I'm talking from. I'm an author and a director, and I was the founder of a VR studio called Nowe Lab, which I left in 2023 to better align with my values, especially contribute to climate change ideas. So I've been working in immersive and in tech since 2009. The studio has released lots of projects, and I have a background in R&D in video games. That's some of the projects we've released over the years. You might know a few of them. You might have seen some of them in different festivals. So I'm not a climate change expert and a carbon expert. I'm a creative entrepreneur in the XR domain, and I'm talking from within the immersive industry perspective. So I'm really not an outsider, so that you better understand. So the first project I'm going to talk about is Okawari. In 2019, we were invited to showcase to pitch some project in the largest Australian film festival to talk about climate change. And we had a bizarre idea, a sensation, feeling of being pyromaniac firefighter. Like, how can you fly from Europe to Australia to pitch a project about climate change? So that's somehow that bugged us a little. And then COVID came. And because there was no planes, no rush, together with Landia, the co-author of Okawari, we started to ask ourselves, what are we contributing to? You know, we stopped to be the mouse in the wheel for a little. And so we tried to connect all the dots and see the elephant in the room. How can we talk about climate change without measuring our own impact? How can we even if we're trying to do engaged project about important subject matter, how can we ignore our own impact? That was the question that started everything, and that led to the Okawari project. So the idea of the Okawari project was really to have a project selected at Venice, because there's lots of professionals, VR professionals, XR professionals in Venice, and have this project raise awareness about the environmental impact. So it's a bit different from usual project. This project was really about raising awareness within our own industry, and of course people around also. So Okawari, just to explain what it is, Okawari is a multiplayer game about overconsumption, and there's a side of the project at the end that also talks about climate change and the impact of numeric IT, informational infrastructure, like everything that involves computer. Because we usually have the feeling that everything is in the cloud, so it's not tangible, but it is very tangible. There's lots of data server and lots of resource consumption to be able to do those things. So it's 4 people in a virtual restaurant, and it's at the same time 4 people in a real room. They all play together, connected, and there's that was the first. There's also a live carbon counter at the entrance of the piece, so that we were counting in real time the carbon footprint of the project, which has never been done before. And we also had a presentation in Venice to explain what we wanted to do. So to really do the project correctly and measure our impact, we focused on measuring the carbon footprint of Okawari. So we realized that it's much more complex than we expected. So that's why we started to work with Cooperative Carbon. You can see the logo at the down left of the presentation, and we realized that it's complex. So I won't go into the details, but you need to know lots of things to compute your carbon footprint. So the first thing we realized is that we can measure quite easily all of the direct emissions. I hope you can see the mouse. So what is called scope 1 and scope 2, it's you measure directly all of the emissions involved with the creation of the project. So it's the electricity consumption for the computer, for the building to heat the building, etc. But then comes all of the scope 3 emissions, and those ones are really harder to measure. You need to take them into account. And there's the scope 3 upstream and downstream, which means that when you do a project for VR, for example, you need to take into account the fabrication, the creation of the device itself. So you need a computer to do the work, you need a cell phone usually to work, you need the headset to show the project and to build the project. So you need to know what is the impact of all of that. And downstream, there's also the use of the device themselves and the end of life of the device. Those things are really hard to estimate, and we did not realize at this moment that we are part of a global ecosystem, and when we buy a computer and when we use a computer, there's lots of steps before that made it possible. And if you want to compute your impact, you need to know about that. So the results, I've got a couple of orders of magnitude, but we don't necessarily have time to go through there. But I tried to compare, that one thing we can briefly talk about, I tried to compare the average emission of a French person and a Polish person. And I could not find very precise numbers for the Polish part, but it looks like we're quite close, like it's 10 tons a year for an average French person, and it's between 6 to 10 for an average person in Poland. So it's interesting to see that there's not so much difference, but your energy mix is quite different. We have lots of nuclear power in France, and you don't have the equivalent in Poland. So to compute our the Okawari footprint, we started from a reference. We used the previous project that was called Umami, and we computed the carbon footprint of Umami. We chose Umami because it was presented in Venice, and our target was to present to Okawari in Venice. So it was a good reference to see where we were before and how we could do things differently. So we computed the carbon footprint of Okawari. We found a number of 42 tons of CO2 equivalent. And to our surprise, most of the impact comes from the traveling. You can see here all of the festival goers travel, because all the people coming to the festival, they contribute to your impact. Even if they see 10 pieces and one of the pieces, the piece they see is yours, for instance, if it's Umami, then you get 1/10 of their impact traveling there. So if they are from Venice, it's fine, they just took a boat or a bus. But if they come from Europe, maybe it's train, usually it's plane. And if they come from very far away, then it's always plane. So you take this share as an impact for your project. So our main impact was the transportation of the team and the transportation of the festival goers. So that was quite a surprise, but that gave us insights on how we could do things differently for Okawari. So that's a quick analysis of the travels for Venice 2018. So as you can see, there's lots of people coming near, but their impact is quite small. And there's less people coming from far away, but their impact is massive. So for Okawari, we did the same computation. And also we decided beforehand, like before starting the project, we decided to try to eco-produce as much as possible the project, like to minimize its footprint, its carbon footprint as much as we could. So we decided to not take any flights. So, and there's a comparison between coming by flight or by car and here by train. So if you do Paris-Venice with a flight, and if you do Paris-Venice with a train, like you reduce 90% the impact of the trip. So we decided that nobody will take the plane, and it was a co-production with Canada, and it was quite hard for the Canada team, and thanks to them, they were okay not to come to Venice, and we did not go to. It was presented in Montreal, also in FNC, Festival of the New Cinema. Okawari was presented there, and nobody from Europe went to the. So the DPT from Canada took it and took care of everything, and we took care of everything for Venice. That was a way, even though it was an international co-production, we did everything with Skype, Zoom, Teams, whatever, and we avoided anybody to travel using planes. And same to do Paris, same to do France, Venice. Everybody took train, except for two of us that did car sharing to bring the material for the installation. So it was a quite intense trip. But as you can see, we really were able to reduce a lot the impact of the traveling. So we did a first estimate. We thought we would end up at 64 tons. there's already 11 tons that were emitted to create Okawari. So it's you can see it here. It's steam transportation, it's ICT, so device, data center, network. It's office energy to power the computer, to heat the building, etc. It's hotel stays in the installation in Venice and a few other expense. And we were expecting this amount to be, because we reduced the other amounts, especially the team transportation, we expected the festival goers to represent a massive amount of our footprint. In the end, we had this computation, so it was 44 tons. It was less than expected. And I'm going to explain very quickly how, why and how we did that. So what we did is that we had, for each person going through the Okawari project, we had a very short questionnaire, a very short survey that people would answer. They would say from where they are coming, with the transportation mode, and the number of pieces they thought they would see while they were at the Venice Festival. So this way we could know exactly where everybody was coming from, their transportation method, and how many pieces they will see, so that we could get a precise impact. And also, one other thing we did more is that between 2018 in 2022, through lots of discussion and through some reflections from the Venice Festival, they changed also the way they provide places for installations. Before, it was disposable plasterboard, so everything would go to trash after the festival. And now, since 2022, I think, it's reusable panels. They can reuse them like 4 or 5 times, depending on how much they've been worked. And so that contributed to reduce the carbon footprint of the installation from 1 ton to 140 kilograms of CO2, considering that the walls would be used 5 times. So that was another big thing and big improvement with the help of the festival. And also, as you've seen maybe in the pictures, all of the installation was done using cardboard and wood. So everything has been reutilized after. All of the wood has been, after the installation, all of the wood has been given to a specific not recycling, but to a specific place that reuse the wood. And so some of the wood went into tables, some of the wood went into other furnitures. And the cardboard also is very easy to recycle. So we tried to use as much as we could recyclable or reusable materials. So that was another decision that was made. The results of the questionnaire, we were expecting 450 participants, and we were expecting they would see 6 projects in average. We had 400 participants. Some people did not want to answer the question, so we probably ended up around 450, but we had only 400 people answering to the survey. They were seeing 10 projects in average, but the days were very different. Like some day we would have people very local that would come from Venice or nearby, and some day we would have like mostly foreigners, and so we had very impactful day and very low impact days. So this questionnaire was very important, and you can't necessarily extrapolate from one day to the other. And also the surprise that made it, instead of ending up at 66 tons, we ended up around 44 tons. It's because we had much more train than expected and forecasted between 2015 and 2022. Some people really changed their perception and the way of traveling. So we had more people than expected that traveled by train, which is a very good thing. Like it's really great that in 4 years, because of the awareness raising, that you can see people changing their doing different choices on how they travel, especially. So that was a very good surprise. But then the questions that came is, okay, how can large festivals like Venice, how can they do to lower their footprint? Because the model of the festival is to have people from very far away from abroad that come and reunite in one place. So when you see the impact of doing such thing, you really wonder how you can lower that. Venice was happening also during the COVID, and they had satellite Venice in lots of different countries. Unfortunately, they stopped doing that, but that's one way of reducing the footprint. So that's a very interesting way for the future for festivals to kind of act differently, because having so many people traveling very long distances for like 1 week or sometimes a few days, it's hard in today's world. And the other things we were missing for Okawari to better evaluate our footprint was the online distribution. We were targeting of distributing the project online, and we didn't know how to evaluate the impact of distributing online. Because if the project is a success, it means it's running on lots of headsets. It means it's downloaded lots of times. So we didn't have tools to evaluate all of that. So that's when we decided to do the CEPIR project. So CEPIR is in French. It's an acronym, French acronym, Cas d'études pour un immersif responsable. It's a case study for responsible immersive. And the idea was really to tackle and address also this part, the online distribution, but all of the missing parts. Like if you put estimates, the Okawari production was this amount of impact, Venice 2022 was this amount, but the online distribution, depending on how good it is, if it's a success or not, you can go from this value to this value. It's tons of CO2 equivalent. So you can see that if the project is successful, your impact through online distribution can be massive and can be more than all of the other impacts. So that's why we wanted to have more tools for that. So to do that, we needed to have better carbon footprint estimator. We needed to do life cycle analysis because we didn't have any values for the headset. We didn't know how much, what was the impact of fabricating a headset and then the end of life of the headset. The idea also was to open source all of the foundings, all of the things we would find. So we also created lots of different tools and also best practices for eco-design. That's roughly what we wanted to achieve through the CEPIR project. So let me talk now briefly about CEPIR. So that was the final result for Okawari. And since, as I just explained, we were missing data, like we were missing the footprint of headsets, of phones, of clouds for specific use of VR, we wanted to really determine the impact and also the added value of doing such project. Like if I'm doing this project, it has this amount of negative impact, but I hope that it will have this amount of positive impact. And if the balance is good, maybe I can take the decision of doing the project. But if the project has lots of impact, but it's not necessarily changing anything to the awareness or the state of the world, or it's not talking about an important issue, maybe I can consider that the impact is too, the bad impact is too high. So maybe I can not do the project. And the underlying question was if we can't reach a reasonable use for an emerging media, how can we reach a reasonable use for everything else? Since we need to decrease all of our CO2 emissions and other pollutants and lots of different things, and water, and if we can't do it for something that's not yet generalized, massively generalized, like maybe we'll talk a bit about AI after that. If we can't regulate something that's not massively deployed, how can we hope to regulate what's already deployed? That's kind of the philosophy behind the project. And it's we're talking a lot nowadays about Sea Shepherd because of the Paul Watson arrest. And Paul Watson has the same, when he started doing Sea Shepherd, he had the same question. It's if we can't protect the whales and the dolphins that are animals that everybody like, how are we going to protect the rest of the ocean life? So somehow that's the reflection behind. So CEPIR was 70% funded by the French government, and it was 30% funded by 3 companies: Tiny Planets, Cooperative Carbon, with whom we've worked before for the footprint of Okawari, and Nowe Lab. There's also lots of different partners. You might recognize IDFA, that was a partner with us, also in diversion cinema, that helped us quite a lot. So it was great. So the results, there's a whole website. It's called cepir.info. It's in French for now, sorry, but it should be, hopefully, Anna will confirm, but it should be translated at some point in Polish, or part of the report will be translated, hopefully. So in all of the results that are available on the website, and it's all open source, open access and everything, there's all of the bibliography links that we've used. There's the life cycle analysis of the headsets. So now we have real values for that. There's the carbon footprint for of industry players. There's projections, anticipations for 2030 and 2050. There's use case to be encouraged. There's also the best practice report, how to eco-produce your project. There's a carbon calculator for the industry. There's a video retrospective and a global report. So there are lots of material available. And a quick note, because I talked about a lot about carbon. Is it the only metric that should be used? The answer is no. And the evaluation framework for CEPIR was to go beyond the carbon footprint and to think of all of that in terms of sustainability of the XR industry, sustainability at large of the planet, and the planet boundaries. Like so the image is in French, sorry, but if you globally what this picture shows is that there are 7 and there's even more now, 9. I think that there's 9 planetary limits, planetary boundaries, and we are exceeding gradually most of them. Like we are about to reach the 1.5 degree of temperature raise. There's a biodiversity problem. There's biogeochemical chemical problems. We are almost about to reach the problem for the available soils. There's there's problems with water also. So ocean acidification, we're not far from getting into some dangerous boundaries. So we tried to think more globally than just with the carbon. So the first action we did was to do life cycle analysis of the headsets because there's no data on that. So we don't know what's the impact of fabricating a headset. So we did that. We did that with some with professionals, like people that know how to do life cycle analysis. They know how to dismantle correctly, and they have all the tools to identify all of the components, so that they go down to the components, and so they can have a very precise estimate. It's still an estimate, but it's they can have a precise estimate of the impact of building different headsets. So all of the data now are available on the CEPIR website. We had to anonymize the data because manufacturers, they don't really like that we look deeply into what they do. So it's anonymized. And also they have big if they don't agree with the results, they can be quite efficient with legal and all of those kind of things. So we had to anonymize them, but it's all available on the website. And here are some of the results. The headsets, for example, using OLED screen. OLED is the screens that have most impact. So without the controllers, the fabrication of a headset has an equivalent impact of more than 400 kilometers by car, and the water consumption is equivalent to almost one French people for 1 year. I'm not sure about the conversion for the use of one person in Poland. But that means that when you buy a headset, you buy the equivalent of your water consumption for 1 year. What we can see in this picture is that the majority of the impact is in the manufacturing. You can see the end of life, like the recycling. It's this tiny little red bar. It contributes, but very little to the overall impact over the full life of the headset. So what this means is that whenever you buy, and it's true for all of the IT equipment, like it's true for the tablets, for the computers, it's true for the TVs, for anything that's electronic equipment. It's really true. So it means that every time you buy something new, you already bought most of the impact, like all of the impact on climate change, pollution, water use, and everything is already done. So this means that you should extend the life as much as possible of all of your equipment. Like changing a cell phone every year is a problem, because every year you build a new phone and you have the maximum of the impact that is built. So that really, the first idea you can get from that is try to make everything last as much as possible. And if you compare that to the pace of the evolution of the XR industry, it really immediately raises some questions. Like when you have, it's a bit slower now, but when you have new headsets every 6 months, it's really hard to say, oh, okay, extend the life cycle of all of your equipment. You want to have the latest computer with the latest graphic card to be able to compute better visuals than the other ones, and you want to have the latest headsets and everything. This is really not something that is sustainable. Like the pace of innovation right now is not sustainable, and the underlying question is, is it a problem if the innovation slows down a bit? Like, or slows down a lot. Why do we need to keep such a fast pace in innovation? Everybody likes innovation and likes novelty and everything, but if the counterpart is that the planet becomes uninhabitable, like it becomes a wasteland, then probably we don't need to be that fast. That's one of the key findings also we had. So that's the other parts of the impact, like the contribution to the use of abiotic resources, like metals, rare metals, and everything. The use of water and everything. And so all of those data, they are now available in the deliverables of the project, but they are also available in what is called the base empreinte. So it's a French database with all of the emission factors. So emission factor is really how much building one thing, what is the impact on different aspects. I don't know if this database is available in Poland. It might be, or it might be that some government officials or organization can probably ask ADEME in France, the organization that takes care of this database empreinte, they might be able to have access to this base. There's lots of very useful information since it's computed for using French energetic mix, for example. So the impact needs to be adapted for a different context. Like it needs to be adapted for the Polish context because the values are going to change a bit. But it's not hard because everything is in place. You just need to replace some of the values, like the average energetic mix in Poland, a few values like that need to be changed, and you will have the new emission factor adapted to your country. So we tried as much as we could to contribute to all of the data that was missing, upstream and downstream, based on what we see. So I will skip those quite quickly because that's the values we've reached. I can just briefly show you the impact of LCD versus OLED. I think there's a mistake. It's OLED LCD. It's LCD here and OLED here. But that's the impact of fabrication of one headset with controllers, and you can see that it's comparable to half of a large tablet. It's much less than a TV. It's much less than a VR laptop. So it gives you an idea of where it stands. Like it's around a modern cell phone. So it means that if you want to minimize your personal carbon footprint, then it might be a good idea to not buy anymore any TV and just buy headsets if you replace one with another. If you accumulate, then it's not good because you just accumulate the impact. So it means that as a substitution, it can make sense to use that as a substitution. So there's lots of other different emission factors. They're all available. So I'm not going to spend time detailing that. There's some missing data. We couldn't include some specific material like haptic gloves, some how do you call jacket, some vibrating jacket, the pods like this one where you can walk in all directions, 360 cameras. We haven't been able to get an open dismantle 360 cameras. The problem is that when you dismantle those objects, most of the time you want to have out of use material because they won't work. If you take a working one, we need to dismantle so much that it won't work after. We won't be able to rebuild it correctly. So there's also in all of the results available on the CEPIR website, there's a carbon calculator for the industry. It means that if you're a VR creator, an XR creator, or an XR studio, you can use the tool and compute the impact of your own studio or your own project. So you can really, it's a very useful tool. There's the manual that explains everything, but you can really tomorrow start and say, okay, my project, all the data of my project are those ones, and then up you get your estimation. And that's a first reference. You can say, okay, this project I just finished is like 10 tons of CO2 equivalent. So, okay, let's try to do the next one, but decrease by 20%, for example, or 50%. And also, the nice thing is that it gives you all of the different areas where you spend most, like is it the heating and the energy of the building? Is it the planes? Is it the transportation? Is it the food? Is it other things? So it's a very useful tool to see where you should work first. Like, okay, most of my impact is on planes. It's usually what happens. So you can start to have a different policy and have a kind of decision tool to say, okay, this we have this event. Should we go? Yes or no? Because if we go, it's by plane. If we go by plane, it's this impact. Okay, but is it very important for business, or is it just for something else? And you can start to assess your decision and see, okay, maybe there's an alternative. We can not go by plane, but go by train, or maybe we can go by plane. But if we go by plane, so let's stay longer. Let's visit all of those possible partners. Let's do this and that, so that the impact is not only for a few days, but it's spread it over more things. So it's a very, very useful tool to actively take new decisions and act every day for that. So it's an Excel spreadsheet, and there's everything available. That's an example of a synthesis that the carbon calculator can give you. So you can directly see that it's your déplacements you're traveling that has the most impact. Then it's the goods and services. Then it's the building. Then it's the vehicle. Then it's the meal. And so you can, the first, if you have a report like this one, the first thing you can work on is really the traveling. There's also a document that's called Best Practices. It's all of the different things you can do day to day to think to lower the impact of your production. Like, I will come back to the list, but each practice is let's say cards. So there's cards for everything that made sense. So this one, for example, is a card called the Run for FPS. So it says that we are running towards more and more frames per second. It's required for VR, because you need to be fluent, otherwise you're going to have dizziness and motion sickness. But what can you do to still get the amount of FPS you need, but not go too further away, and try to program differently and evaluate if you need or not this. So it could be directly applicable to regular video games also. So this, and there's also, is it a priority thing or not? Who is it aiming for? So this one is aiming at developers, graphists, producers, project manager, and tester. It's a moderate effort to put it in place. It's a very light financial effort, and it's a very heavy economical gain, and it's moderate medium environmental gain. So that's how each card is structured. So that's the list of all of the cards. So we tried to cover as large as possible. We're talking about issues like rapid iterative prototyping, engine comparison, language comparison. Should I program in C++, in Lua, in whatever, engine best practice, implementing versioning, how to correctly version things. Should I version everything? Should I version large data like textures, because they take so much space, for example, audio files, etc., combating lazy programming, race for SPFs, we talked about using LOD, level of details, recycling assets, ping consumption management, physical versus digital distribution, so post-launch updates. So we try to cover very large, so that as someone in the industry, or as a studio manager or technical director, you already have all the tools for your best practice, and you have all the tools to really eco-friendly produce your work. So everything is open source and it's alive. So if we've forgotten some topics, we're of course open to updates and new technologies and everything. Just I can see time is running, so I'm gonna be very quick to tell what's remaining. We also did some prospective work. So what can be the industry in 2030 and 2050? So we made different scenarios like the renouncement, the sobriety, the tendential, the maximum scenario where XR is everywhere. And there's lots of interesting things like if we project ourselves in 2030, the three scenarios, like the maximum scenario, the industry scenario, and the tendency scenario, they are almost all reaching the limit of the numerical budget allowed, which means that if we have XR everywhere, we have almost nothing else. So you don't have a computer anymore. You don't have you can almost not use AI. You can't use a TV, for example. So that gives you an order of magnitude of the choices that needs to be made. I'm skipping very quickly. There's a calculator, so you can estimate your own carbon footprint. Like if you're a person that owns a laptop, a smartphone, a TV, and a VR headset, like this person, then you can see that in 2030 and 50, this person would have an average of this result to 256 kilograms per year, which is above what we should reach in 2030. So it gives you an idea of how much equipment you can have in 2030. And in 2050, it's even less. So it gives you an idea of what your individual choices should be if you want to be climate friendly, let's say. So it's a tool to prioritize in a constrained budget, in a constrained carbon budget. And last but not least, the three levers you can act on is sobriety, do less and really think before you do things, evaluate before doing things, efficiency, and renewables. That's really three ways as a studio manager or as an XR creator you can act on. And also, that's the last thing, and I stop for the questions. We also issued recommendations for public institutions and for XR professionals, and those recommendations they are aimed at the French government, but I think the same could apply to the Polish government definitely. And it's a list of everything that should be done if we want to prioritize the use and see what we can develop. Should we develop XR at large, or should we develop AI at large? Should we focus on use of AI, for example, for medicine because it makes sense? And should we restrict other use because the impact is going to be too much? So that's the kind of recommendations we tried to do. And there's also recommendations for industry and artist professional. One of the interesting recommendation is adopt a consequential approach, meaning when you start a project, think about all of the consequences of the project, evaluate their impact, and then decide if you do the project or not. So there's lots. Everything is available on the website. So yeah.
Thank you. That was that was a rush.
Yeah, sorry.
But yeah, the time is short for the Q&A. Thank you for this comprehensive presentation and your research and everything you mentioned during the presentation. It's really impressive, the work done, and I confirm that we are now working on translating some of the findings into Polish and also appropriating the calculators to our energy mix and our XR industry structure. So this will be coming in next few weeks, which I'm very happy about, because I think that the topic you touch is really important, and the awareness raises in Europe and outside Europe very much. We have actually 2 questions, but there are 4 questions because one person asked a lot of questions in his comment, which I'm very happy. But we have 10 minutes, so if I may ask you to answer the first one briefly, so that we have the 5 minutes left for the second one. Okay. So I will read them. The first question is, thank you, especially for the focus on the obscure materiality of the digital culture. I wonder, what is your take on the possibilities of the fair trade and low tech in the XR infrastructure supply chains? Will the XR equivalent of fair phone or framework laptops appear?
Thanks. That's a very good question. The way the industry is structured now, it's very unlikely, unfortunately. Like if you look at who's fabricating the headsets, it's only big corporations, like HTC being maybe an exception, but the rest of them, like Meta, Apple. There's Pico, so but the Pico is is Tencent or no, it's Byte Squad, Quad Byte, but it's a very large Chinese company. So there's yeah, I think it's very unlikely that we see any emergent Fairphone VR headsets. I'm not sure. And even if you look at Fairphone, Fairphone is great. It's a great initiative. Still, they are they try as much as they can to source with fair use, with fair trade, and everything. But there's lots of things they don't have the control on. Like most of the chips, they don't have the control on how they are made and the metal that is used. And the chips come mainly from a few manufacturers, so you don't really have the choice. They design differently so that you can replace parts, so that's a very good thing, meaning that if your camera is broken, you can change the camera. But more importantly, I mean, the overall difference in raw impact is not that much. But the really cool thing they do is that they try to implement this idea that you don't need to change your phone all the time. Like, okay, at some point there's better cameras, so maybe just put a better camera and you keep the rest of the phone. The battery is dead after 5 years, then maybe, okay, change the battery. And if we start to dream about different things and want different things, and if having the latest cell phone is no longer something that's valuable or that's socially rewarding, then we're going to make progress, and they contribute to this idea, so it's great. But given the state of the industry now, I'm not sure, because if Apple goes there, it's that they think that there's going to be at some point they don't want to miss this computing interface, because if it's used as a computer, for example, all your data are going to go through there, and they want your data. So that's why the big players are there. So it's going to be hard for a fair XR.
Thank you. That was a question from Michał, and the second question, a few ones from Paweł. What is the awareness, the will to produce sustainably in the industry? Do creators even care if budgets are getting smaller and smaller? And is it possible to get special funding for green production in the VR world?
Yeah, very practical question. It's I mean, my feeling is that people are happy that we brought the issue and that we did all of this work, so it can really help to start something. But there's so much still to do in the XR industry. Like, the market is not still there. It's evolving all the time. There's a few countries like France where you can have some really correct funding for the piece, but there's lots of places where you don't have such fundings. So the XR industry and the XR creators are quite struggling to make it happen, let's say, and make it livable or economically sustainable. So I don't think, and I don't see that eco-producing, etc., is a priority. I would like it to be much more priority, but I don't see it being a priority right now because of everything I just said. So I'm not sure I'm not sure it's correctly placed in the radar. But and if you look at the overall scheme, I don't know what the XR is going to become. What I can see is that we're going to have lots of different issues for resources, for energy, for water, for lots of things. And if at some point we need to choose between medical appliances, like for example, IRM or things like that, or VR headsets, I'm pretty sure of the choice that will be made. So that's why I'm a bit cautious about the developments, and that's why probably, I mean, we should assess the impact of things before deploying them. And we talked briefly, very briefly about AI. The problem right now is that we deploy AI at large, and then we will see what happens. But we should do the inverse. We should first see where it's useful, where it has a low impact, focus on those use, and then gradually deploy as we are sure that we're not doing more harm than we're doing good. And I have I did a whole presentation about AI last week, and it's the problem is really this way, because the caution principle says that if there is a chance that we do significant and irreversible damage, we should first assess the negative outcome. And once we have demonstrated that the negative outcomes are not problematic, then we can deploy the technology. Right now, we're doing the opposite. We are deploying the technology at large, and then we will deal with the problems. And it's not the way it should be done.
And the funds for the green production, are they available in France?
In France, it's the same. The same funding principles are applied. It hasn't changed, but they have introduced how do you say? They have introduced an eco conditionality. So you have to demonstrate in your project that you're aware of all of the problems and that you're taking actions to reduce as much as you can the impact. It's not a very big constraint. Like if you demonstrate that you did this and that, and that you tried to lower, then it's fine. It's not gonna prevent you from being funded. Like you don't have to reinvent crazy things, but it's becoming now a criteria of evaluation. Like today, it's becoming harder to get some financing if you don't at least mention that you are aware of the problem and that you're doing everything you can to try to reduce as much as possible the impact. But it's still the project that is the main thing that is evaluated for the funding.
It's same in Poland, but of course it might be very superficial, and you can just say that you did your best, but nobody
Yeah.
like verifies this. So I guess maybe this is a process that needs to be done.
At least it's mentioned.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a very big constraint for sure.
I must say, like I thought about this when I was listening to you, that Spektrum Festival that is happening now is really carbon footprint friendly in terms of the fact that we rent the equipment, we don't buy the new headsets, we use recycled materials. In terms of scenography, for example, for one of the pieces, Emperor, we didn't ship the installation, we recreated our own. We have a great in our team that could do this. So we try to limit this. I think this comes with lower budgets. If the festival has a huge budget, it's not so. People are not mindful for the for the, you know, ecology and all those aspects, because they don't have to, and those are the key factors. I think we really pay attention to this, and we try to be eco-friendly and aware of the consequences. So just a reflection I had when I was listening to you.
No, it's great, and the more we are connected species, like, and we influence each other a lot. So the more we can see other people taking care of things like that, the more we will want to do it as well. And the good thing is that what we need to do to keep the planet friendly is also what ultimately is going to make society as a whole better. Like we need to share more things. We need to go less far away and do more things closely with people that are close to us. We need to reuse, recycle, and destroy less the planet. We need to have more wildlife, and we need probably to produce less, so it means working a bit less and focus more on spending time on social caring in our proximity. So it's a nice thing that all that we have to do to keep a planet sustainable and livable is also something that is globally going to make us more happy and more connected with each other, rather than just being individual people focused on accumulating more money, more cars, more TVs, more whatever, which usually doesn't bring happiness.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Amaury, for talking with us about this important issue, and I hope, you know, we will continue, and as I said, we will translate your research and the good practices part for sure. We will also come up with our own, like, in the context of Polish industry. So
Yeah,
we'll keep everybody posted. Thanks again.
yeah, thank you, and we were super happy to see the word spreading around.
Dziękuję wszystkim za pytania, dziękuję za udział i zapraszam raz jeszcze do odwiedzenia sekcji Nowe Narracje, klubu Bolko i kawiarnia teatralna codziennie 12-18, w weekendy do 20. Do zobaczenia i do widzenia.